PA race here, huh?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So tell me what made you want to jump into the race?
Well, I was a prosecutor right after law school. So I interned in the Chester County District Attorney's Office, and I was in their highest volume single attorney court for a year, as well as their juvenile court. And just really enjoyed the job, really enjoyed the opportunity to put the puzzle together and create cases. After that opportunity, I worked in the Bucks County District Attorney's Office as well as Delaware County District Attorney's Office for a little over 5 years. I was on the trial team in both offices and specialized in high-end financial crime, complex financial frauds. Worked on cases anywhere from death penalty homicide cases, drug cases, sexual assault cases, and just really enjoyed the work, really enjoyed the opportunity to stand up for victims and let their voice be heard against people who thought they could bully them and taunt them and get away with it. So we had the opportunity, my wife and I, to move back to Indiana, and I worked over at Holsinger, Clark, and Armstrong, and I've always had that interest in getting back in the seat.
Yeah. From a prosecutorial standpoint, that obviously is experience on that end of it. You also have experience on the defense end of it as well, don't you?
I do. Since 2012, I have been on the list of attorneys who get court appointments. I've been court appointed to several very serious cases here in the county, which I believe shows the credibility of my work and how the court feels about how I can put together a case. So I've had the opportunity to see those cases from both sides. I think that gives me the extra experience to say I know where the defense may be coming at cases, and I know how to prepare for that. And quite frankly, being on both sides of the cases, I'd much prefer to be on the prosecution side.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the various approaches to prosecution of crime, because there can be many of them, and every case is nuanced, of course, to its own specifications. But there are differences in the way that you approach based upon any number of factors. The victims themselves, sometimes the victims' wishes come into play. The ages of the victims, obviously the severity of the crime, all of those things, they all must be taken into account, even from a prosecutorial standpoint. And you also have to measure and weigh the amount of evidence as opposed to how you approach a case, do you not?
You do. And that's where I believe your relationships with law enforcement, your relationships with the county really become a strength. When I was a prosecutor, I believe that if you put a lot of the work ahead of time into the case, in the very beginning as you're putting that case together, rather than waiting for the day before trial to try to find something, what you're going to do is you're going to create much stronger cases and a higher likelihood that you're going to convict that defendant of the crime they actually committed. So when you have a case in its infancy, when it first begins, and you know what you're looking for, you're able to gather that evidence very early, and you're able to prepare for all those questions that are going to come down the road. So when I was a prosecutor, a great deal of the work was put in the beginning, and you benefited at the end because of it.
We have this image of district attorneys, prosecutorial conduct in a courtroom or in the background of a case, in the preparation for a case. Generally, it's formed by what entertains us on TV. It's not really like that, is it?
No. The cases are not finished in 1 hour minus the time for commercials. In order to put a case together, you're going to be putting many days, many hours, many months into that case. One of the cases that I worked with law enforcement on was a complex financial Ponzi scheme. Myself and the police officer put 19 months worth of investigation into the case, multiple bank records, multiple financial documents, and we were able to build such a strong case in $1 million Ponzi scheme that it turned into the defendant pleading guilty to the charge he committed and going to state prison. When you put that time in there, it's not pretty. It's not made for television. Sitting there with records after records and looking for the details and trying to figure out those clutch pieces of evidence that are going to get the conviction, is hard work that does not really make for entertaining TV.
Attorney Robert Manzi with us in the studio this morning, running for Indiana County District Attorney. Obviously, when you decide to take a major step such as this, you need the support of your family. And I'm sure that in order for you to take this step, you had to be sure everybody was on board with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. This isn't a one-person show. My wife Amy and I had many conversations about the amount of work it goes into a campaign and the amount of work it goes into doing that job properly. We had conversations with my son Charlie and my daughter Liliana. Had conversations with people in my office. This isn't something where you just say, "Hey, I want to run," and it's over. Without a doubt, everybody I spoke to, everybody that was I had that conversation with, supported me 100%. They knew my experience working the cases before. They knew how much I enjoyed that work. They knew that I don't shy away from hard work. I grew up in a blue-collar family where we were taught if you want something, you work hard for it. So I have their support. I've always had their support. This weekend, I had the first opportunity to kind of take a break and go to my daughter's swim meet to see her last time. So that was nice, but we're back at it this morning, and we're going to keep working hard at it.
You mentioned working with the law enforcement community, which is obviously a necessity of a prosecutor. The case doesn't just come to you. Very often we see district attorneys and all across western Pennsylvania. They're actually on the scene of the crime. They get called to the scene of the crime. Is that a common thing elsewhere, or is that something unique to western PA?
I think that depends upon the type of crime and the district attorney's office. Some district attorneys like to be on the scene to see what's happening. Some of them defer to law enforcement and let them put the case together. My belief is the more I can help support what law enforcement doing, that's what I'm going to do. I don't want to get in the way. I don't want to be there just for a photo opportunity. If me being there is going to benefit the case, I'm going to be there at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever time it is. We have men and women in law enforcement in this county who are fantastic. They would run through a wall for you. And I want to be there to help support what they're doing because they're out there right now. They're putting together great cases. They're working very hard. They're gathering the evidence, and they're putting together really good cases. And I look forward to working with them because I know the products that they're creating in their investigations.
There's so much that has to do with jail terms, prison sentences, and especially I'm thinking of the opioid crisis. There are other approaches to punishment. What's your philosophy? Because we learn about recidivism, we learn about rehabilitation and the possibilities for people going back to a life of crime. As you approach the idea of let's settle in on the opioid crisis, what are some of the factors that you think need to go into prosecuting that particular person who might be convicted of a crime and then the sentence that comes afterwards?
Well, I think the primary factor of the prosecution should be properly identifying what the problem is with this individual. So if you have somebody who's coming in from Cleveland and they are a for-profit drug dealer who's coming to Indiana, and all they want to do is be a vulture of the people who are dealing with an addiction. And for their financial gain, what should happen is they should be prosecuted for the crime they committed. They should be prosecuted for dealing heroin or dealing cocaine or whatever it is they're selling here. You need to properly identify that problem. If you have an individual who's dealing with an addiction, and it's a first-time offense, and they're better served with some sort of supervision, some sort of treatment to help them with that addiction problem, that's how we should identify it. But the main issue is properly diagnosing the problem. If we take a for-profit drug dealer who's bringing fentanyl into our county, and then we say, well, we're only going to let you plead guilty to possessing drugs instead of selling drugs, you don't properly identify the problem. And if you don't identify the problem, you're not going to fix it.
Attorney Robert Manzi is with us this morning, running for Indiana County District Attorney. Opioid obviously is at the top of everybody's list when it comes to crime and punishment here in Indiana County and across Western PA and maybe across the entire Commonwealth. What are some of the other issues that you see need to be addressed from a district attorney standpoint?
I think what we need to address is any times there's crimes against our vulnerable populations. When we have children who are the victim of crimes, and when we have the elderly who are victim of crimes, we as a district attorney's office need to stand up for them. Children can't stand up for themselves when they're 8 and 10 and 12 and they're the victims of a crime. A lot of the elderly populations need help when they are scammed out of their money, when they're being assaulted, when they're being abused. So we need to focus on those populations to make sure that the issues are being properly reported and that they're being prosecuted, and again, identified to what is actually going on. The second part of that is helping out with education. Every district attorney's office does this, and it's a valuable tool, is getting out and helping educate. I go out and work with different groups. My wife and I work to bring the Healthy Kids Running Series into town, and it's still going strong as an opportunity for children to learn healthy alternatives to drug addiction, to sedentary lifestyles, and to give them a positive outlet in their life. So those problems are always going to be here. And when we focus on those, we focus on not only helping educate them ahead of time, but then prosecuting and holding people accountable for what they did, then we're going to be able to treat that problem better.
Couple of months left. It's hard to believe. A couple of months left until the spring primary season begins. But I'm sure that there's a site that people can go to, maybe a Facebook page. How do people learn about your campaign and about events that you have coming up?
Well, I have a Facebook page, Bob Manzi for District Attorney. We're working on a website that'll be up soon, but all the information's on the Facebook page. You can reach out to me. You can also call me at my office. I'm out and about in the communities. Since I announced about a month ago, I've been out to just about every portion of the county. I've been to over 850 houses. I'm at events every weekend. So I look to meet a lot of people out in the community to deliver the message that as your next district attorney, I will be holding people accountable for what they did.
Appreciate your coming in to visit with us this morning.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
It's Robert Manzi running for a district attorney of Indiana County, and it is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160, 101.1 FM.